What's up, everyone? This week's episode is sponsored by Tokyo Treat. So if you don't know what Tokyo Treat is a monthly pop Japanese snack box where you get up to 20 of exclusive limited edition and seasonal flavored Japan snacks, including Japanese instant ramen and drinks that are only available in Japan for a limited time. Now, every box does come with what they call a cultural guide booklet, which Emily's got right here. And this contains Japanese cultural information and an explanation of each snack, like the flavor profiles, ingredients, and allergen information. So we find it really helpful, for allergies and that sort of thing. And of course, we're all working on our Japanese here. However, it's nice to have something in English to tell us kind of what it is and explain what it is before we just dive into it, not really knowing what it is. So the booklet's a super awesome thing. Let's go to theme.
So this month's theme is Okinawa Snackin' Oasis, which is super fun. So let's take a look here. Now it says, "Hey Tokyo Treat fam, pack your bags and don't forget your sunscreen because this month we're heading down south to Okinawa, famous for its crystal clear blue oceans, white sandy beaches, and amazing local eats. It's truly a foodie's paradise. We ventured down to one of Japan's most popular getaway destinations and brought the best flavors back as souvenirs. We packed this box especially for you to get a taste of island life in Japan, to get ready for a tropical flavor getaway in the Okinawa Snackin' Oasis box. Thank you, the Tokyo Treat family." Sounds lovely. Honestly, I love summer flavors. I love mangoes and papayas and stuff like that. So
Papaya.
a papaya. So we'll see what's in this box. I'm excited. Oh, wait, there's a picture of us, what? Guys! Oh my God, we're in the box. We're in the magazine.
We're in the box.
Oh my God! Hey! That's so cool.
I was looking straight at Gojo. Oh my God!
It's so cool.
I can't believe it. I'm on the cover of a magazine!
Oh my God, I just watched that movie!
I'm dead.
What an honor. It's so much fun. Obviously, that's really cool that our picture's in there, and we've just had so much fun getting to open these boxes for the last several months and get to share with you what some of our favorite snacks are, get to make our little checklists for the things we want to bring back in our suitcases when we go to Japan.
Yep.
It's a really, really fun thing to do with friends, especially when you're about to watch a really cool episode like the Demon Slayer season finale that we're about to watch. I know, Hannah's not well. Nobody's well, but Hannah's the least well. Favorites?
I liked the sour cream and onion chips the best.
I think I have to agree. Those were that was the first thing we opened. They were so delicious. I liked the caramel candy too, though.
I think I'm gonna have to go with the soda. I loved the soda. The soda was so good. Honestly, it was so refreshing. It was so delightful. I really liked it. I thought it was really good.
Tom, what was your favorite?
I like the sour cream chips.
Thanks so much again to Tokyo Treat for sponsoring today's episode of the Hashira Half Hour. Let's go ahead and jump in. All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Hashira Half Hour, and this one is quite special. We are here already. It's hard to believe it's been 8 weeks, but it's time for the season finale of Demon Slayer's Hashira training arc. There's so much to unpack in this episode. I think we kind of just need to dive in, but I will be your host today, and as always, I'm joined by my friends.
This is what I get to see when I get back from vacation. How am I supposed to go back to work tomorrow?
How am I supposed to eat this pizza without my drink?
My diet Dr. Kelp. It was an episode of Demon Slayer, to say the least.
It was definitely on TV.
It was definitely an episode of anime.
And what an episode it was. Let's just jump in. There's so much. This is going to be a long episode, so apologies in advance. Might as well call us the Hashira Hour at this point.
We've been needing to change the name for the past 2 years, honestly.
Called out. But diving right in, we of course pick back up where episode 7 left off, which was with this iconic entrance from the main villain. Our big bad Muzan is here, and this walk up to the Uba Yoshiki mansion and to Uba Yoshiki and Amane themselves. And they begin to talk a little bit, which I think is interesting, but not entirely unexpected that Muzan would allow for there to be a little bit of a conversation, because the way that this could have gone a different way, in that Muzan could have just straight up just killed the two of them before he even probably made himself apparent to either of them. But I think that Uba Yoshiki, like, intentionally opening themselves up was in some ways, like, interesting to Muzan, enough for him to hear out what Uba Yoshiki had to, like, he wants to savor this, if that makes sense. So they do begin to have a conversation, and really it just starts with Muzan looking down on him as usual and kind of saying, like, you're in a pretty sorry state.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why Muzan is okay with speaking with him is that he feels, and it's why he walked in so slow, he feels absolutely no fear. He 100% believes that he's going to be able to take down Kaguya in this moment, because Kaguya is not going to be able to fight back. Like, he's right in thinking that, but I also think that Muzan has a morbid curiosity and genuinely wants to talk to this guy, because he's the head of the house that has been thwarting him for 1,000 years. Like, he has an annoyance towards it. It's more of an annoyance. It's like bugs you can't kill, right? Is how Muzan kind of sees it. So I think that the start of this conversation of him just looking down on him kind of explains why there's actually a conversation, because he feels no fear against this guy. And he's just curious. He genuinely is so evil that he just kind of wants to talk to him.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that Muzan does let him talk. I love when there are moments like this, though, when there's like a battle of concepts against each other, and I think this is a really interesting moment for us to like review, is that like these two, no matter how like different they are, they are also like similar in the sense of like they have their own clan, they both have their own, you know, ideas that they're upholding and things like that. So it's just very interesting to watch them kind of play out their ideals in front of each other and really like demonstrate what they're all about to each other. And I think that's what makes this, like, I guess, interesting enough for Muzan to continue it, is to see what this has been all about. Like, what has he been thwarted against, and like what is the like Demon Slayer like true meaning, and like I think that's what he's like going after here.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack, and there's a lot of different ways that this conversation could go. But I like how calm Uba Yoshiki is, even as he's like clearly close to death, regardless of what happens here. And honestly, one of the standouts in the scene is actually how calm Amane is as well, considering everything that's going on. And obviously she's not butting into this conversation, but she really is just as much a part of it, has been like speaking in his stead to the Hashira. And he actually kind of goes into this for a moment, because Uba Yoshiki starts to almost give like a history lesson to Muzan, which is kind of interesting, because you'd think if there's one person who should know the history of everything, it's the guy who's been alive for 1,000 years. And maybe he does, but we have to get educated as the audience. So Uba Yoshiki explains that the two of them are actually from the same bloodline. What did you guys think of that revelation?
It's that similar but different, like the same like line of like understanding that they are like similar in the sense of they've both been traumatized to a certain extent, but their traumas have like played out differently, and that like they're pursuing after their like vengeances differently as well. And I think these traumas that they've faced have all come from similar experiences, but they've played out differently.
Yeah, it's been foreshadowed that they're related somehow, and what's cool about this little conversation is that it's explained kind of what's going on with Kaguya. Because I know a lot of people, and I've seen people ask this over and over again, can't Nezuko heal him? Because his skin turning purple looks very similar to the way they show like poison in people's bodies. It's not exactly the same, but you know, he's talking about the fact that because a demon was born out of the family, that's like they're cursed, which is so interesting. But I love backstory, and I love it done in this way, because it's just building the story.
Yeah, and it has to. But how interesting to have all these young men cursed for like eternity because of what Muzan turned into at his own behest. It's definitely interesting and very full circle to have them coming together here at this final moment. But to dive a little bit more into that same bloodline concept, that's kind of where the importance of Amane comes in as well, because Uba Yoshiki gives us this slight flashback, this slight history lesson about the boys that are born into this family that are apparently like dating all the way back to the time period that Muzan would have come from as well. The boys have been like sick, frail, and very ill usually in infancy, and didn't survive past infancy. And so they consulted a priest back in the day who advised, like, marry into my family and perhaps that will help too. So there's like a little bit of like a religious twist to help like kind of quell these demons, which is interesting to see in an Eastern piece of media. And obviously, like, there are a lot of Christian concepts that have made their way into various parts of the world, but like the religious, like, almost like, here's the cross, here's like my thing of garlic, like send the vampire away kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's the same kind of concept, like purify your bloodline again with members of my family. Mm-hmm. And it kind of worked, but only a little bit. To extend their life at least into early adulthood, but Ubuyashiki goes on to say, like, most of us don't live past 30.
Well, as the resident Christian here,
Yeah.
it is very interesting to see kind of how this pulls a little bit from like Western Christianity, especially because Demon Slayer is based in such like old time Japan when
Mm-hmm.
Western culture was really just starting to kind of make its claim
Mm-hmm.
on parts of Japan. And then you add to the fact that this all is happening 1,000 years ago, which is long before any type of Western culture was involved in Japan whatsoever. So to see kind of from my perspective here, I still think that this was very Eastern religion.
Mm-hmm.
However, like, it almost gave me the vibes of like this priest is telling them almost that they're like possessed by demons because a demon was born out of their family, and that's what's causing them to die. Because I think at this point all those babies, they were born sick and weak and just died, like still babies. So like marry a priestess or marry family of priests, and that'll help like the demons go away, is kind of how I saw it, which kind of like brings into my mind the idea like in Christianity that is like if you welcome Jesus into your heart, demons can't possess you, essentially. Like, we are, because we have the Lord like living inside of us, essentially, like demons can't possess us, because Christians really believe that demons exist in a very different way than in the world of Demon Slayer. But that's your little, hey, I guess I've never talked about the fact that I'm a Christian on the podcast, so surprise.
Little theology lesson.
Well, and I'm not really speaking on it that well, but it is interesting from my perspective here to kind of see maybe a little bit of like my own religion tied into it, I guess you could say. But that being said, it's kind of sad to think, because when you look at it with Muzan, he has a different family name than like Kaguya does, and you wonder if like it's a distant relative to like maybe a cousin or something. Like, what happened to the Kimutsuchi family? Did they all just die? Like, was that just it? Like, if this was in fact a curse because he became a demon. So an idea, but shout out to Amane. She's the real MVP of this, because like you said, and I think I mentioned this in episode 7, she's just sitting there supporting her husband, and really brave for doing it, because I don't think she has to be there, truly.
I mean, she didn't have to be there, but I think she chose to be there out of support. The kids, I'm not so sure about. I don't know if they also made the choice to like stay there and support the like cause in that sense. Now the kids with that song, creepy, giving me The Shining vibes with the two kids. Like, seriously, like, oh my god, I was creeped out by no other. But like, I think that this was a really good scene in the sense of like all of these like people coming together to like almost really to like lower Muzan's guard. Like, if they all knew, like, because it was like kind of like a Death Note moment where they're like, you know, I know, you know, you know, I know.
If this were Death Note, most of this conversation would have happened inside their heads.
Yes.
Doesn't know within a minute.
Literally. So like they knew that we knew, and it's just a really interesting piece to watch play out too, because if Ubuyashiki knew that Muzan was coming, like, why would he leave his family there? So very little like mind tricky.
It definitely is, and we're going to keep going with it because the conversation takes up most of the first half of this episode, honestly, but it's all really important, and we've built up to this for a long time.
Yeah.
That being said, we're going to transition quickly to what Muzan has to say in response to like this history lesson, which is basically, do I look like a bitch that cares? The answer's no. He's like I forget the exact translation, but it was something like, don't bore me with your drivel.
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel anything. like, if you think that you're gonna gain any kind of sympathy from me just because maybe we're family from somewhere far down the line, like, I'm not the one. Which I don't think would be surprising to Ubuyashiki at all. In fact, we'll get into that, but I don't know. Surprise reaction from Muzan? Not for me.
That was like when Gege announced that Muzan's their favorite character.
We're all like,
of course it
is.
Of course it is.
Muzan not being like not caring at all was not surprised. Like, this was just another day at the office for him. He was like, listen, I've got better-ish to be doing right now than to be listening to you spiel on about how we're related and we're possibly like long-distant cousins or whatever it may be. Like, this was all something I guess he probably expected and like saw coming, but also at the same time, like, not what he expected for a man to be saying in his final moments. Like, really, you're going to be trying to give me a history lesson in your final moments when you could be telling me about how, like, we're going to stop you, we're going to do this, da 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 da.
Yeah, I think he more expected Kaguya to be a little bit scared and also be a little bit like, no, we're going to get you, that sort of thing. And for him to talk about his relation to him, I think kind of surprised Muzan in a way that just kind of had him like, I don't feel emotional about that if you wanted me to. And then he kind of went into, I think this is where he talked about the fact that he's lived for 1,000 years and Buddha nor God, he's never seen them, he's never been punished by them, he's just lived a free life even though he's killed thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. And he's just kind of like, well, that's too damn bad.
I'm tired of this, Grandpa.
Too bad for you. So sad that you all got cursed and I didn't. That's kind of, I think, the way he felt.
Yeah, I agree. He doesn't feel any remorse because he can't really feel much of anything. He's not human.
He's the true demon.
He is the original demon. He is the original sin. So I don't think any of this was surprising for us or for Ubuyashiki. But then Muzan is the one who's actually a little bit surprised for the first time in this episode because he truly feels nothing to the extent that we start to hear the internal monologue that's happening as he's like looking at Ubuyashiki and Amane. The two girls are playing with the ball beside him and he's like, I actually don't feel anything. Like, I don't even feel hatred for this guy necessarily. So it's like the true lack of emotion, and then this is overlaid with the song. And I was trying to look up like a little bit of this song, but like the lyrics are not lost on me here that these girls are singing. It is creepy. It is very like shining energy. But the first lyric translates to one is for one night ending. And there's a lot of foreshadowing here with this song. I'd have to look a little bit more into like all the pine decoration references. I'm not 100% sure what that means. But one is for one night ending. We're in for quite an evening ahead of us, starting with this conversation. And on a larger scale than that, this reign of Muzan being the conqueror of the nighttime. Bit of foreshadowing?
There's a lot of foreshadowing happening in this conversation, but there's also a lot of full circle moments happening. This is the conversation that changes the show, in my opinion. You know, we're getting into that final battle, so I think even anime onlys will understand that like things are changing here, and even the intensity of previous battles is going to be nothing compared to what we're about to experience with this show. But it is interesting, just the eeriness of the song and the way like no one noticed them, and then all of a sudden they start singing and they're like smiling and happy, and they're doing this right next to Muzan, so they know what's going on. They have some idea. They're not just playing a game.
Right.
I don't think they were there at first. I think they knew to come out and do this when Muzan was there, and this is truly the first time Muzan shows a bit of emotion and is confused by like what's happening. And I think like this is truly Kaguya. He is like the light Yagami, you know. He's kind of outsmarting Muzan here by perfectly placing his family members. And Muzan's like, do they have no fear? Like, why do I have no hatred for this man, and why do they like not seem to have any fear? Like, he genuinely doesn't understand humans, I think, and this is kind of, I could be going like way off, but we're going off of like watching this once and reading the conversation like twice in the manga, so it's definitely an interesting moment and very, very eerie. And I do also want to see if this song is this a song that was made up in Demon Slayer, or is this a song that like Japanese kids have sung like as a, I don't know, nursery rhyme or something? I'd like to look that up. We didn't have time.
The song itself, like I said, creepy, but also like the animation of it too, with all the balls and stuff. Like, I don't know what all the balls mean, dropping. Balls dropping.
God damn it.
Sorry.
Keep going into this serious episode without making some kind of
one sort of teenager joke. But yeah, like all of the like play balls dropping around Muzan, and like him in this like confused state of like what's going on, and it's just a really interesting overall like take on like what's happening, because Muzan is confused for one of the first times in a long time, probably, like feeling like what's like really happening to me right now. Why don't I even feel hatred at this moment for someone who I definitely should feel hatred against, who's been the literal thorn in my side? So I think it's different from what he had expected.
Something that I like that just occurred to me as you were speaking, Brian, was like these full circle moments that are happening, and like we're back to these balls, and we've seen this design before for these children's toys, and it was all the way back in season 1 with like these different twins going back and forth, but it's like who holds the power in the scene has shifted.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
Muzan thinks he's had the power this whole time, and I think this is when he starts to be like, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah, there's definitely something creepy afoot. With that being said, you know, Muzan's kind of lost in thought, and Ubayashiki comes back to like bring he's like, pay attention to me. I'm in charge here.
Yeah.
And he says like, I don't even have to see you to know what you're thinking about. He's like, I know that you're thinking about eternity. And Muzan goes on to say something like, and I'll have it soon as I find Nezuko, even though you seem very confident in where you've hidden her. The difference is that I have forever, and you only have a few moments. And Ubayashiki smiles. And he starts talking about eternity. He's like, this is what you think it is. This is what eternity actually is. You've never been punished by Buddha or by the gods. And in all of this time, in these 1,000 years that have passed that you've been wreaking havoc, not a single person has forgiven you. And then the balls that the girls are playing with shift into hundreds of thousands of orbs surrounding him to represent, I imagine, maybe not even everyone that he's killed, but everyone who holds a grudge against him. And just animated really beautifully, and like really isolates him for the first time, considering how hard he struggled to surround himself with a family, like these upper moons and lower moons and all these demons that he's created. And he, you know, has kept his arm's length distance, but at some point there is like, I don't know, a struggle for familiarity, a need to recreate, and he's alone here.
I think this is an interesting conversation, because I think this is going to show, because I've always said this, I think Muzan's a little dumb. He thinks he's a lot smarter than he is, but he makes a lot of mistakes throughout the story, and he's made mistakes already. You know, the whole idea of him walking up so slowly and him just like feeling completely safe is because he's not thinking about anything other than the fact that he's going to kill Ubuyashiki, and that's going to be that. He thinks that maybe some demon slayers might show up, that there might be guards, and he'll just kill them, right? And what's happening here is like Kaguya is just challenging all of what Muzan thinks is fact, right? And so I was kind of looking this up because I wanted to make sure like we were catching like the important stuff of the conversation, and we have like Muzan is saying like, can I guess what your dream is? And it's eternity, to be undying. And Muzan said, yeah, like that's why I'm looking for Nezuko, and it will happen once I do. But Kaguya is like challenging him. He's like, what is eternity? Like you said that the gods have not punished you, but human feelings are undying. Human feelings are eternal, and that's what he says here. And hold that thought, because that's gonna come up again, the idea of human feelings, and also the fact that this is a conversation that's happening now. Muzan is going to remember this conversation later on. I won't go into detail, obviously, but this is not just important for what has happened up until now, this is important for what is still to come for this story. So, but human feelings are undying, because like I think about a situation where it's like I've lost a loved one, but their feelings that they had remain in my heart. Mm-hmm. And that will continue on when I die someday, you know? And that's eternity, is the way you make people feel. And he's sure making a lot of people unhappy, because he's killing these people without a second thought. And the survivors of this situation, that is the demon slayers, that is the Hashira. And they are the ones most equipped to take him on. And so while he thinks that if he just becomes eternal, he'll be all good, but what he's been doing in that quest for eternity is making the real eternity. And that is the feeling of all these humans that have lost so much because of him. And that's just like really what the story is about, right? It is just like all these people banding together to fight one foe. And Muzan is alone, because all he's done is made enemies even amongst the people who revere him. So this is where he starts to really get confused about this conversation, because he genuinely came into this thinking he was just gonna kill Kaguya, maybe kill a few Hashira, a few demon slayers, and call it good. And now he's like, what's going on here?
Yeah, at this point, I think Muzan's still super confused and questioning his own beliefs on eternity, because eternity can mean so many different things. I mean, we saw the Eternity Devil back in Chainsaw Man, and like, what did that mean for like an infinite loop of time? Does that mean eternal time in a linear format? Does that mean the feelings that you've given others and the feelings that you create for others? It really ponders the question of what eternity means and what eternity is for every single individual. So I think it's really difficult for Muzan to grasp that his eternity isn't exactly what he thought it might have cracked up to be, and that the eternity that he's created for himself is something a little different, and his impact on the eternity of others is something of hatred and despite in its own.
The concept of eternity is covered a lot, actually, in Demon Slayer. We'll get into it more in a bit, how we might see it physically manifested. Excited for that. But for now, we will move on, because this conversation is not done yet. And at this point, this is like one of the first things that Ubuyashiki says that sounds like a threat. And this is, he's like, you have hurt so many people for so long, and it's gonna catch up with you. Maybe now. He's like, you're the one who stepped on the snake and the lion's tail, and they're coming for you. And as he's saying this, we're seeing the visuals of each of the Hashira turning around, each of the present Hashira. We know at least Sanemi is aware of what's going on at this point. So
yeah, well, like the physical description that Kaguya says is like you've just stepped on the tail of the dragon, or the tail of the tiger, and you've woken the dragon because of it. And the only reason, like, they would have all been sleeping if you hadn't killed their families.
Yeah.
And you built it up, and now it's like it's ready to fight you, because you think, like, it kind of started with Tanjiro in this present line, you know, of him like killing his entire family, and kind of everyone is following his destiny, right? And all the Hashira, I don't know if, yeah, he's stepping on the tail, and he says, like, they would have remained asleep if you hadn't have done that. If you had just not killed the thousands of people, because he doesn't have to. Yes, he needs humans to eat, but he kills for fun.
Yeah.
Right? And because he has that desire for eternity, he's looking for, you know, the blue spider lily or a demon that can withstand the sun. He's been looking for those two things, which is why he's been killing people.
Yeah.
If he hadn't have done that and he just dealt with not being in the sun and not killed them, these people would be sleeping.
Yeah.
They would not be trying to fight him, and that's what's going on. And that's, you said, like, that's the first time Muzan really shifts, is when Kaguya is like, if you die, that means that there's no more demons, right? And that's his first, like, real, like, oh, shit, he knows what's going on, which is crazy. Kaguya is so smart.
Yeah, it's like the scene Levi versus Beast Titan, where he's like, your body can't regenerate after coming out, can it? And it was like kind of cool to see like Ubuyashiki turn into a little bit of a beast in himself, because he's like starting to threaten Muzan and like push back a little bit, because he knows it's his final moment, so why not give him a little bit of the razzle dazzle while you're at it, right?
And to be such a frail, sick man laying there and be able to make Muzan shake in his boots even just a tiny bit is quite a feat. Yeah.
Crazy.
Quite a feat. Without even really moving.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible. And at this point, I think Muzan's had it. He's like, you're not going to stand here and insult me to my face when you're laying there looking like that. So are you done talking yet? He's like, his Wolverine moment. His fingernails coming out. And Ubuyashiki's like, yeah, I actually didn't think you'd listen to me for this long, to be honest. Which is valid. I think, like...
And then he's like, can I say one more thing? And then he keeps going. And I was like, girl, what is this? Is this like your dissertation moment? Like, you go stop?
He said, I'm a gossip girl. I got something to say.
Go piss, girl.
Go piss, girl. But on that note, we do cut away from the conversation at long last. And this conversation is extremely important, but we're getting into some of the action. So now we begin to see all of the Hashira running towards the Ubuyashiki mansion, because they've all received the emergency summons, probably sent by Sanemi and his crow to start.
Yeah.
We see all of them except for Gyomei. We don't see Gyomei running towards the mansion, but everybody else is in a frantic race to get there, and Tanjiro, of course, who is an honorary Hashira at this point.
At this point, yeah. I keep saying, like, he just hasn't had there hasn't been time for the official promotion ceremony. He's a Hashira. So, really quick, before we get to the emergency summons, because this ties in with that, Kaguya says, after he says, may I say one last thing, he tells him, I'm not important, but that does not mean my death will be insignificant, which is so important, because Muzan, like, essentially thinks that Kaguya is not that important.
Yeah.
He can't wield a sword. He's sitting there sick. He's, insulted him multiple times about how bad he looks, right? But he's like, fortunately, the Demon Slayer Corps, especially the Hashira, are quite fond of me. So if you kill me, their determination will, like, they're gonna come down with the wrath of 1,000 snakes, right? And that's when Muzan's like, are you done talking? I'm gonna kill you now. Because at this point, he's actually upset, which is crazy. And that's when we see all of them running, which is the embodiment of what Kaguya literally just said. He's like, hey, I'm not important because I can't swing a sword. I can't kill you. However, the people who can are coming because they don't want me to die. And that is like so important, because Muzan cannot understand that. If he died, the Upper Moons would not care. They'd be like, freedom, right? Or they would just die too, because they would die with him. But they couldn't care less.
Yeah.
Because he's set up this world where all of the demons are scared of him. They don't love him. They just have to speak respectfully to him, because otherwise they'll die. And Muzan's like, he's not a big deal. He can't swing a sword, but he doesn't understand the idea that all these people who can kill him, who have that power, will do it in the name of him.
Yeah.
And that's something Muzan doesn't understand, and that's why, like, this conversation, Kaguya truly is, like, the light Yagami, because at the end of the day, he did defeat L.
Yeah.
So, I guess spoiler alert to anyone who hasn't watched Death Note. That show's been out for, like, 20 years, so sorry if you just got spoiled. But Kaguya's winning here, 100%. And here they come.
I think with him saying that he's, like, not important, I don't think that's necessarily true. I want to challenge that a little bit, because I think he is important. I think he is part of the eternity that he is stated, that is, like, coming through this, like, light at the tunnel, is, like, he is a part of the bloodline that will stop, like, that will try to stop, at least, like, Muzan Kibutsuji. So I think that realistically, him saying he's not important, no, he's not, like, on the front lines of the battle, but everyone plays a part in every battle. So, like, whether, like Tanjiro said, like, even if you guys are going to support roles, like, I don't have to worry about, like, stopping to fight the demons and stuff like that. Like, Kaguya Ubuyashiki definitely is important, and I would say it's just that he's not on the front lines. I wouldn't say he's not important.
That's all fair. That's all fair. I love seeing these boys and women running. Although, obviously, they're about to have some emotional damage. Because what we see next is a really, really quick recap of what happened after Amane spoke to the Hashira and basically shared, like, you're not going to be able to see Ubuyashiki again because he's just too frail and is, like, nearing the end of his life. Which they had kind of accepted, but then when they were speaking about it in private, they were talking about, like, what would it look like to have a bodyguard with him at this point, knowing that he's in such a state, which is interesting because that's not something the Ubuyashiki family's ever done, nor do I think that they would want for any of the Hashira to do that because they are too precious. They're needed for this fight, which everyone's aware, and they've been needed since the inception of the Demon Slayer Corps to, like, be on standby to fight the actual demons. The Ubuyashikis are not terribly concerned about their own well-being, knowing also probably that they're not going to see anything past 30. But they love him, so they're talking about what they could possibly do to save him. This is a very brief flashback, though, and then it really is emotional damage because we cut back to the present moment and we see an explosion begin in slow motion here at the Ubuyashiki mansion, which was devastating, obviously, but animated so beautifully.
Yeah, I mean, the use of, like, realistic elements versus animated elements in this scene is so good. Like, it was, like, realistic fire versus, like, these clearly animated, like, spiky things that are coming out, and, like, it is all of the bricks looking like they're, like, actual, like, tiles and things like that. Like, it looked so real, and the way that it was timed was so well because you saw everything start to, like, go out and, like, forcefully combust, but you also saw, like, things stay still and calm for a moment, which was, I think, equally as eerie as watching, like, the actual house blow up, was because, like, you saw everything like in its final moments, and I think that was the worst part of it all, was watching, like, Ubuyashiki knowing that, like, that was his final moment, was that blow up.
And not just him. That was Amane's final moment. That was their two kids' final moment. I feel like that can sometimes get forgotten because this conversation has been so focused on the two of them. And that's why I say, like, I feel like his wife and his kids, he is a man who gives them a choice. Mm-hmm. It kind of, like, you know, in the very first episode of the season, we talked a little about it. We know there's some kind of situation with the mark that they gave them the choice. Like, hey, you need to know that, like, this is something that happens if you get the mark manifested, so that if you choose to not manifest the mark, that is okay, is essentially what was said. So I feel like Kaguya gave Amane and the two kids an opportunity to say, like, to be like, no, we don't want to die here. And it could have just been him, and it would have been the same difference, but they willingly gave their lives for the cause as well, which is so sad. The explosion being slow motion was insane. UFO table, hats off to you. There's something so interesting about the way they animate fire and water when it's legitimately the elements compared to the way they animate it for breathing styles. It looks very different. And the water and fire, I told you guys this when we were watching it, it looked so real, this explosion. And to see it all happen in just, like, complete slow motion, and seeing the shock in Muzan's face kind of unfold, and seeing just it really, it's like watching a plane crash and being like, those people just died.
Yeah.
And that's what just happened, is like Kaguya, his wife and his kids just died. And it's like, wow, this was a training arc.
It was. One brain cell.
Technically, the last episode was the end of the Hashira training arc, so yeah, here we are.
We made it, and yet we are so far. Yeah, this was absolutely gorgeous. I think that they took a lot of the praise to heart from the end of the Entertainment District arc, because beautiful explosions and sound design, and the slow motion was an interesting choice here. That wasn't really something that we got in Entertainment District.
It was just the one.
And so it's like the boom.
Boom.
but it's like for me, it's almost like the silence that comes with this slow motion is like we realize what's happening, and then what we're going to talk about next is the Hashira not making it in time, and like not even being there just yet, seeing and hearing and smelling and feeling the explosion from a distance. We see like Sanemi get caught in the aftershock of it. We see Tanjiro covering his nose and saying that he smells blood,
burning flesh.
And burnt flesh.
Burning flesh.
Yeah. And all the various reactions and this sense of knowing that they didn't make it in time.
And Gyome's still not present.
And Gyome's still not there.
I can't even imagine, because they were all saying like something along the lines of like, we got to get there in time, because they're getting these emergency summons. They're saying like there has been an intruder at Ubuyashiki Estate. That's all they know. They don't, because again, I keep saying this, the only person in existence right now that knows what Muzan looks like is Tanjiro. So not even like Sanemi knew, and we established we're pretty sure Sanemi's the one who sent it, because he just called out that they were infiltrated. So they're just saying, okay, someone showed up, and they're like, we got to get there in time, we got to protect him. And for them to all witness right where his house is an explosion, and to immediately know that they failed in getting there in time. They know that he is now dead. Like, they might not want to accept it, but they know that like a person can't survive an explosion like that. And like Tanjiro especially knows, because Tanjiro's the only one who can smell the burning flesh. He knows.
Tough, because watching all the Hashira try and get there, like every time in the previous seasons, like they've tried to go through and like get somewhere in time, it's always panned out in their favor. It's always been something that they've been able to get through. And so realistically, like, this is the one time they don't make it, and it's the time where it really counts the most for the person who they need most. And I think that's kind of what Kage was playing to, is like using his own death as that fuel for them, so that way they would be more pissed at Muzan when he did die, whether, you know, this was a part of his plan or not. I think it was all in the vein of trying to get Muzan as weakened as possible, so that way he could, maybe have a blow landed against him.
100%. And we're going to cut back to Muzan's thoughts next, because as this is all unfolding, I think he's beginning to realize for the first time how the tables have been turned on him, and how this was a trap set for him.
Yeah.
I think he was fully under the impression that he would have the upper hand in this situation, which is why he allowed Ubuyashiki to like take his time and explain. It's like this is their first time crossing paths, and like we were saying, he wanted to savor this moment. But what I don't think he realized is that Ubuyashiki was really the one savoring it, because he knew exactly what was happening, and the use of like the children and his wife being present, and like just the fact that he left himself open at all for this to happen was all to lure Muzan in. But in some ways, this is kind of a trap for the Hashira too, because it's like, I'm forcing this to happen right now.
Yep.
And we know that like we technically weren't, like obviously we're done now with the actual arc of the training, but not everyone had finished all of the different steps at this point. And could this have been like prolonged a little bit if Ubuyashiki didn't kind of like reveal himself? Like probably. But he's kind of forcing this to happen now. And I think that's because he has a huge sense of confidence in the crew of Hashira that's been curated in this present generation, and their ability. I think he's aware that there's like a unique chance here that probably won't come around again anytime soon to be able to take Muzan.
He said it all the way back in season 1 that he believes that the Hashira that he's gathered here are the strongest since the first Hashira in the second Goku period, which had freaking the Yoriichi, the literal progenitor of breathing styles. So he trusts his children, as he calls them, with his whole heart.
Yeah, he does. And we're gonna have to see what happens with them. He's not gonna be able to, he already couldn't see anyway, but he definitely can't see anything
He's
now.
not gonna see, yeah.
He can't see nothing now. That being said, we now cut back to Muzan, who gets like blasted out of the house, Attack on Titan style. He is messed up. We are hearing his internal monologue again, and this is the moment where he finally realizes that he was like in the snake's trap this entire time. He's like, there was a lot of bloodlust hidden under that very calm and gentle demeanor, and this is the level. This is what it looks like. And so it's like this massive explosion that takes out himself and his entire family just to wipe out Muzan. And it's not even just an explosion, because this is like what cuts now out of the slow motion into the full motion, and it's like a devastating, massive attack. It's not just a bomb, it's like a bomb loaded with like nails and spikes. And all of those we can imagine have probably, I don't know if they said this outright, but like probably imbued with wisteria in similar ways to like things that Shinobu has done before. Like, he would not waste this chance to try to take Muzan out. And so the level of violence and like how graphic this scene is kind of bewildering, considering what Ubuyashiki has presented himself as. And it's like he's had so much time to think about it and build up his rage. We see him again a little bit earlier in the conversation, but like walking through the graves of all of his like precious children. And we've seen him do that before in other scenes in Mugen Train. He's had lots and lots of time to think about how devastating this is, and now Muzan is just beginning to scratch the surface.
Well, I think what happens next just goes to show what, like you said, Muzan walked in thinking he had the upper hand when it was straight up a trap. Which is smart also on Kaguya's part, because imagine if Muzan figured out where Nezuko was first. That would be an issue.
Yes.
Because Nezuko can't die. Like, she can't do what Kaguya just did.
Can't do that again. I cannot handle another PowerPoint with Nezuko sad moments.
Oh, no.
And this time, yeah. Well, she can't, like, as in, like, if Muzan found her, he would just kill her and absorb her immediately.
Alas.
And there would just be, that would be it, because Muzan would be immortal and the world would be thrown into chaos. Anyway, yeah, he's been in a trap the whole time and everything's starting to fall into place. Like, the actual explosion itself, Kaguya knew was not going to kill Muzan. It's the steps afterwards that he's hoping, would be just like the domino effect to take him out. And like this first step is a blood demon art from Tamayo, kind of.
We're getting there.
Yeah, so even though this was just like the scratching the surface of it, I think it's important to recognize how big of a scratch it really is, just because this explosion really puts Muzan in a difficult position to try and recover very quickly, because the Hashira are on the way, right? So now everybody has to get crunky and get moving, just because now it's like do or die time. With the emergency summons from Sanemi, like everyone's rushing and the explosion has now occurred and they didn't make it in time. So now that we have this opportunity to try and strike against Muzan, now that they all know the master is dead, they have the fuel they need to start fighting Muzan, which is going to be a difficult task overall, but nonetheless still an important one. So now that Tamayo has showed up and she's got the pseudo blood demon art from the dude in Asakusa. The dude. I don't remember his name. He didn't get a name.
He didn't.
But
he literally didn't have a name. He's the man from Asakusa.
NPC.
Yeah, I mean, they used that and they immobilized him, and then he's like, I'll just go up and absorb it. And then he absorbed probably wisteria poison. So, like, again, Muzan being overconfident and cocky, not surprising by any means.
Yeah, this is definitely just the beginning, and I'm glad that you brought up Tamayo, because that's exactly where we're going next. Back to Muzan's internal monologue. He is trying to recover. It's obviously going slower, and so he knows that something's up, and he's like starting to pick up what Ubuyashiki was putting down a little bit. He's like, I know the Hashira are coming. He can sense like the humans are coming. He's like, it's most likely the Hashira. But he's like, there's something else, and I don't know what it is, but something else is also coming, and then it comes, and it's these massive spikes, these massive blood demon arts, 100,000 times bigger than the things that exploded out of the house, and just as rapidly, and we do see Tamayo show up. She starts to work her wiles on him a little bit. Like, this is her moment to shine, maybe the most in the entire show, and she shares like, oh, do you like what's going on here? This is like a little bit of some of the stuff I've borrowed from others, and she used, blood demon art to be able to show up so suddenly and conceal herself, and now she's using Yuchiro's, and now she's using the blood demon art from the man in Asakusa who has turned back into a human. This is a big reveal that she's, well, not a big reveal for us. We heard about this, but this is probably a massive reveal for Muzan because he's like, that's impossible. There's no way something like that could ever happen. She's like, I've perfected it. Mm-hmm. And he's being pierced with all of these. She shows up and he starts to absorb her hand into his body. She's like, what do you think was in there? What do you think was in there, Muzan? And I think he's, again, bewildered. It's like one thing after another that's showing up that he's not expecting. And she says it is that perfected cure to turn demons back into humans, and it's inside of you now.
Yeah.
This is like her boss moment.
She said, I have a panacea. I have a pan with cookies. You want to see it? I don't know what that means.
Bong.
Tamayo's a badass, man. I also like that this is the first time they've ever animated her eyes with demon slits in it, because they're usually like Shinobu and Kanao's without pupils. So, I mean, it's like I said, it's just a domino effect. This just goes to show how much Kaguya truly planned out here, rather than just being like, oh shoot, Muzan's here. Like, he had a plan. And for some reason, Muzan, it's because Muzan's super overconfident and a little bit dumb. He just couldn't see like so many steps. And this goes all the way back to something I said during season 1, is like Tamayo and Yushiro getting introduced to the story was so important, because yes, we've known Nezuko's a good demon since the beginning, right? But these are the first, outside of Nezuko, who's like a special case good demons.
Yeah.
And they've been important since day 1 of meeting them. And it was like, this again is a full circle moment, because we're seeing like Tamayo has been helping the entire time with this medicine, but it's like she's doing more than just trying to help Nezuko turn into a human at this point.
Yeah.
And she's taking this medicine that she has perfected with Shinobu, so we can assume that it's been given to Nezuko at this point, right? But give it to someone who doesn't want it.
Yep.
And it's all like just gonna start working together. Because again, Muzan's alone.
It's all coming together now.
It's all coming together.
It's all coming together. There's a lot. Everyone needs to work together to make this happen, but we're seeing all the correct steps being taken so far. So loved this moment for Tamayo, and it brings her back since her earlier appearance in the season, where she was kind of recruited to work alongside who we know is Shinobu on some ideas, probably exactly for this.
Yeah.
So excited to see where this is going, but I can't imagine that that's good for Muzan. That he's now absorbed her, and it's too late. He already did it. Like, what are you gonna do? So that's already not looking great, and he knows the Hashira are still on their way. And in the interim, we do get Tamayo's backstory briefly, which is like just through a dialogue. We don't actually get any flashbacks, but we learned that she was turned into a demon because she had been ill and frail when she was human, and that like immediately after turning into a demon, she couldn't conquer her hunger, and she slaughtered and ate her family, essentially, which is rough. And she blames Muzan for that. That's interesting. We don't have like the full picture just yet, but it seems to insinuate that he was involved.
Well, we've seen him kind of maroon as a doctor. Is that the right word?
Moonlight,
thank you.
Maroon 5.
Like, that doesn't feel right. We've seen him moonlight as a doctor. He did that with Rui. He, you know, or Doma kind of did it with Yotaro and Daki. Like, he is manipulating these people who are on death's door and saying, hey, if you become a demon, you can extend your life. But clearly he's not telling them what else that means. That they're going to, like, become murder machines, right? And Tamayo was different, though, where she obviously went rabid when she got turned and killed her family because of it. But rather than continuing on this like demon path like everyone else has, she was able to kind of see, it took her a while, I think, but like see how wrong that was. And she was able to control herself to get to the point where she's at now, which is so amazing. Like, Tamayo was underrated for real, man. And it's so sad though, because she says like, I literally wanted to see my kids grow old. That's why I asked to become a demon. But instead, she killed her kids.
It's like when you do the thing for the ones you love and then it bites you in the ass. This is exactly what it is. And it's really sad for Tamayo specifically because she was, someone who probably in her previous life was a good mother and just just wanted more time. And I think that's where Muzan really shines as a bad guy, is like taking advantage of all these people who wanted more time and taking advantage of those who just wanted to have maybe a little bit better of a quality of life. And so the fact that she's saying like, no, this is your fault, doesn't seem like a scapegoat to me, but it seems like more so like she was tricked and she was connived into hopefully becoming a pawn for Muzan. And the fact that she went on to kill a lot of people is still really sad, and I think she mentions that like her atonement for her sins is coming with Muzan's death, and I think that's a really big commitment to make, is to try and figure out what she can do to help fix the problem she's caused.
Yeah.
Isn't that what she says when, I know we're going to talk about this in a moment, like it segued into Gyome showing up? Mm-hmm. She was like, I'm going to die here with you, and then she called him on.
She sure did. So she is like an unfortunate result of making a deal with the devil, a deal that's like too good to be true because it is. But she's here to break that contract now, even if it took 1,000 years, which is a badass moment. And speaking of badass moments, it's time for Gyome to come in. We've been wondering where he is. He wasn't running in with everybody else, but she's got him, and she yells Gyome now, which means that not only was she in cahoots with somebody like Shinobu and clearly with Ubuyashiki, she's been planning this with Gyome as well.
Yeah.
And that he's been involved because he comes in and we get to see him use stone breathing and his weapon for the first time. What an entrance.
Dude, finally being able to talk about his weapon. It's so flippin'
my
cool.
God.
Like the spike ball and axe chain. Oh my god, it's so cool. Like, there are only so many weapons that aren't like just a standard sword. You got Mitsuri's whip sword. You got Obanai's weird wiggly jiggly. You got...
Not the wiggly jiggly.
Not the wiggly jiggly.
You've got Tengen's dual blades, and then you've got this. This is like a murder machine on a chain. This is just so cool to watch happen. And stone breathing, it looks so much like sound breathing, but like its sound design is so much like harsher, and it's like stones. So it's just a really cool feat to see happen very quickly.
This is where my soul started ascending my body.
Can't vouch.
I was like, this is it, man. Like, this is the beginning. Because, Tamayo's fighting, and Gyome was hiding behind one of Yushiro's eyes, too, because we see him, like, appear. Like, he was there. He was probably listening in on, like, this whole thing. And he just walks in with his big old ball.
This reminds me of white-haired meat.
He literally comes in and just whips Muzan's head off, which is like insane because look at how hard it is to get the heads off of these upper moons.
Yes.
But Muzan like can't move, and he just like whoosh.
Literally knocked his block off.
Crazy.
This is crazy. What an entrance. Beautifully animated, and gives us a great answer as to like where he was. He was like waiting in the wings for his moment here and very clearly involved. And that being said, we get another quick flashback of Gyome, and we learn how this at least began, or the concept that was proposed. And this was also part of Ubuyashiki's design, in that they had a conversation. He's obviously the eldest Hashira, and therefore is, I don't know if he is the leader, but he kind of seems to like have a good ability to control the conversation at least, and to like guide some decisions, because I think that they all look up to him, and he was like one of the last stops as well in Hashira training. So I would look at him as one of the leaders of the Hashira. And Ubuyashiki has a conversation with him just to say like, I know that none of the others are going to go for this, but I want to be used as bait. And Gyome's eternal tears again, but his sense of understanding maybe runs a little bit deeper and is a bit more mature than the other, because they're children. A lot of them are still kids, many of them, or they're young and idealistic, and Gyome has a sense of Uba Yoshiki's terminal illness, I think, and his final wishes, and a respect for that.
Well, he met him, so when Kaguya, like, saved him from being executed, Kaguya was only 14 and Gyomei was 17. So Gyomei is actually older than him, which can be, like, weird to look at someone like a leader when they're quite a bit younger than you, but he got the sense that, like, Kaguya was special from the very beginning. Even though he's only 14, he's like, I've never experienced anyone speak to me like that at that age. And this is the guy that just, like, we just learned, like, has a very, very, like, he's untrustworthy towards children, and Kaguya was 14.
Yep.
You know? So they obviously developed a lot of trust. I think Gyomei is technically considered the leader of the Hashira. He's been a Hashira since he was, like for 10 years.
Yeah.
So he's, like, the longest standing Hashira, which is a feat in itself to still be alive. Just saying. But I think also in this conversation, they explain that, like, the Ubuyashiki family technically has the ability to see the future. So Kaguya's like, hey, Muzan's gonna show up in 5 days. And that kind of was, like, another piece to the puzzles where we could see, like, okay, like, he has been playing this because he knew Muzan was showing up. And assuming that this day Kaguya was probably, like, sending him a crow saying, get here because he's showing up today.
Yeah.
And for Gyomei to be the only one that, like, he could say this to, and for Gyomei to say, like, I respect that and I'm gonna follow you through it, that just goes to show how much Gyomei respects him. Because what kind of respect do you have to have in order to be okay with that person giving their life for a cause?
Yeah.
It's insane.
I think Gyomei, his backstory gets a little bit more interesting here, and I think it really shines through that he's, like, the most feeling of all of the Hashira, and, like, the most understanding, I guess, that, like, he was able to take a step back from his own feelings and try and let someone else, like, give their life to a cause, kind of like you said. And I think that's what's most important about this scene, is that Gyomei is known to be emotional and attached to the world in a sense, but his ability to detach from the world in this moment is what I think is really important, and really a reflection of his, like, Buddhist values, is because, like, your ability, or all, again another Avatar The Last Airbender reference, but, like, your ability to attach to things around you and also detach and see, like, the universal effect on things is really important. So I think this is a kind of one of those moments where he's able to detach from, like, his personal wants, and also, like, understand the value that it is in this trap to be able to play Muzan a little bit.
Yeah.
He also, the end of the conversation with Gyomei, he says something along the lines of, like, you need to, like, go for his head as soon as Tamayo has him trapped, but keep in mind that might not kill him, and if it doesn't, that's how you know you're in for a long night. We're in for a long night, friends.
Long night. Very, very long. But as the girls foreshadowed, one night. Hopefully.
One night? Well,
we've only
when
got
the
one
sun
chance.
rises, we, like...
One chance, one opportunity. And, I mean, Ubuyashiki's done everything he can to set them up for this. So, more to come right now, because all the Hashira show up. All the rest of them, aside from Gyomei, they're all poised. They see the aftermath of everything, even though they were all affected by it. They're seeing this scene laid out for the first time, including what's happening with Muzan and Tamayo and with Gyomei. This fight that's already ensuing. Gyomei screams and, like, bursts them out of their little bubble as they're, like, in shock looking at what's happening, and he tells them this is Muzan, because again, nobody except Tanjiro has ever seen what this guy looks like, and he's fluid in his appearances anyway, so who would even know?
Yeah.
We're seeing some of Muzan's blood demon art, like, in this moment. Like, there is so much going on, and the fact that they're all able to lock in so quickly as soon as they hear the name of what's happening, and we get such a cool moment here of all of the Hashira charging in with each of their distinct breathing styles to immediately join the fight.
I think this was so cool, watching each of them, like, charge in. Mitsuri standing out the most with her sound design on her breathing style, but, like, also it was Tanjiro to scream Muzan as well, and he's, like, screaming at him, trying to, like, get his attention. Their eye contact was just so good. So it was just an awesome moment for everyone all around. But yeah, it was like, it's like Avengers,
Yeah.
but better.
They should have called it Hashira Assemble, not Hashira Unite. So it would have been like
Avengers Assemble.
Avengers Assemble. These are the Avengers of this universe, so. Oh my god. I mean, this scene was just like everything I could have wanted and more. First of all, like, you forget that Tanjiro's the only one here who's seen him before. So, like, he instantly, you can see the shift in his eyes when he arrives. He's already, like, very much concerned because he also witnessed this explosion and smelt the fact that people died in it. And then he gets there and it's Muzan. Like, that is declaring that he's gonna kill for, and he knows that personally for him, his is a little bit different because everyone else is like, that's Muzan, that's the progenitor of demons. So to see Tanjiro like arrive and shout his name and then that eye contact between the two of them, like, that's the main character and the main antagonist. Protagonist, antagonist, gotta have that eye contact. But then everyone, and I think this is when we see Gyome like truly use stone breathing, and it freaking looks just like Yutaro versus Tengen, and bruh, that is a well-loved season for a reason. So if that gives you any idea of what is to come when we see this man fight, I'm so ready for it. But to hear them all shout, every single one of them shout their breathing styles, which is so funny because it's like, usually it's a very like cheesy anime thing that all these characters are always shouting their forms, like their magic or their, you know, abilities. It's a very anime thing. But in this moment, it's so good. Like, to just hear all of them. Kaze no kokyu, koi no kokyu, hi no kami kagura is the last one. And he says it so angrily because it's Muzan. This is like, I think this is when I went to Brian and was like, because holy frick.
It's so, so cool and so well earned. We've been waiting for this. Tanjiro's obviously had pretty much like at least a Hashira in most of the Upper Moon fights that he's gone in against. This is like everybody all at once for now. And it doesn't last very long because as everyone is closing in, Muzan smirks. And we knew he wasn't going to let himself go down without a big fight. And what we maybe didn't realize was about to happen was the opening of the Infinity Castle right here and everybody falling in. And not just the Hashira on the scene. We get like a couple final funny moments. We see, in particular, like Inosuke stands out, about to finally have his shrimp tempura. and he falls through the ground. And then we see Murata and crew and all the NPCs, and like, this is probably what those creepy eyeballs were doing, was like getting ready for this. And Muzan's like, maybe I'll fight, maybe I'll play, but it's gonna be on my turf. And my turf can be anywhere because it is infinite. Like we talked about, this concept of infinity. This is Muzan's concept of what infinity looks like, that he's tried to make manifest as much as possible. So we're in the Infinity Castle now, folks.
So the tables are turning here because this is not something I think Kaguya could have foreseen. Because the Infinity Castle, my only issue with this is a little bit of a plot hole now because Sanemi and Obanai never told anyone about it. They could have said something to Kaguya or to someone, and they could have maybe at least known. And that's where it's like, okay, sometimes anime original content can cause a little bit of a plot hole, because obviously when they fell into it in the first episode, we already touched on, that was anime original. So that's like my only issue with that scene now, is I thought maybe they would bring that back in this episode, and they didn't really. So that's like the only issue with it, but they still just couldn't really know how it worked. And it also, I think Muzan maybe knew where Kaguya was for a while. He was just waiting until Nakime knew where everyone was so that he could send them all, because as he says, his intention is to kill all of them tonight. And he doesn't want any slayers get like stuck somewhere else, which is why like they knew where everyone was. But personally, I loved Genya doing target practice and just being like, bam, 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 where the hell am I? It was like I'm glad they added, because in the manga we only see the present Hashira and Tanjiro fall in. We don't get to see Inosuke or anyone else. I'll say there's one certain character falling in that was my personal favorite entry into the Infinity Castle, but I'm gonna let Brian talk about that one because whoa.
Oh my god, Zenitsu falling in and opening his eyes was so good. was literally so cool. And I was like, his sword was falling in first, and then he fell in, and he grabs his sword, puts it in his belt, and opens those cold eyes. Like, his eyes are so different from what they were, like, 2 episodes ago. It's an amazing opening entrance for him, and it's like, his story is, like, turned. Yeah. Like, you can tell that there is something different about this.
And what's cool about that was anime original, that wasn't in the manga, and it was so cool how they make you think he's asleep because his eyes are closed. And then they open, and it was like...
It was so good.
So good.
Oh, man.
And then, we're pretty much wrapping up here, folks, and the last thing we get is Tanjiro falling through the Infinity Castle. We've got our main character moment here again, locking eyes with Muzan, who's on, like, a much higher platform, saying, "I will kill you." Muzan's like, "I'd like to see you try," and all the doors shut and he keeps falling. This is the last we see for now, and then we get a reveal that I'm gonna hold on to for just a second because I think I want to go forward and then back, wrap up with that. I want to talk about the Taisho Era secret now for a moment because this one, it has been done differently than anything else we've seen. It starts off the same. We learn a little bit about Mitsuri and about how she was Rengoku's Suguko, and
yeah.
Suguko.
It's so hard to remember which O and which U goes where. I always forget it.
She is that, and we like, it's a cute moment, and they're like sharing, or she shares like a nice memory about like eating a lot with him, which is really funny because obviously he is the source of the original umai, and Tanjiro says something like, "I wish I had a memory like that with Rengoku. That would be so fun." And then we hear a voice come from off stage. I don't think we've ever panned off stage in these little Taisho Era secrets. And then Tanjiro and Mitsuri both kind of like look, and we actually see the darkness backstage. Mm-hmm. It's Rengoku's voice saying something like, "What a blast from the past, but now you two have to go fight Muzan, Kibutsuchi, and like, I'm with you." And
Tanjiro's literally carrying his hilt.
And they're both like, "You heard that, right? You heard that, right?" And we all know that it was Rengoku's voice.
This was where I teared up during the episode because, first of all, like, we're going to talk about, I think, the announcement of Infinity Castle in a moment. So there is, like, genuinely the possibility this was our last Taisho secret ever. I don't know if that's actually going to be the case, but there's, like, the idea that could be. And first of all, it felt very final because of the way they showed, like, that they were on a stage. You know, like, we got to see it backstage, and for them to be, like, sharing this lovely moment about both of them, like, having this special friendship with Rengoku, you know, because Tanjiro was, like, kind of a little bit his Suguko. Now my brain is, like, freaking out on it. For, like, a brief moment, right? For them both to just hear his voice and, like, their faces instantly, like, kind of freeze, which is so different for a Taisho secret. The Taisho secret is well known for being this, like, even if the episode ended, like, crazy, like, Muzan showing up, it's like, and now it's time for our Taisho secret! Kokone! Taisho! Kuso waso nashi! Like, and it's like, whoa, whiplash. So for this one to go that route and be, like, they both were like, what? Like, you heard that, right? And to see, like, where they've been doing their Taisho secrets on this stage, it just felt very, like, final. Like, wow, this is really endgame, and Rengoku's, like, sending them off and being like, go defeat him for me.
Yeah.
Very sad. Very sad. And very reminiscent as well of kind of everything that he put on and put up in the Mugen Train arc. So definitely something that we should all be, like, excited that we got a little, like, one last line from him.
Yeah. Kokoro omoyase. Set your heart, please.
All right. The doggy's done, so we got to wrap it up too. We got a reveal right before the Taisho Era secret about what's coming next, and it is going to be the final evening that we have here, folks. We are going into the Infinity Castle arc, and we have learned that this is going to be a movie trilogy. Thoughts, reactions? outbursts.
Gag.
Good gag?
Gagged.
All right.
Gagged me with some rope, tied me to a chair, kicked me over, then put me in the back of a van.
Oh my god. And
Are you okay?
Who's doing that exactly?
It's like, have you guys ever seen that meme where it's like gays describing something good and it's like gagged, put to a chair,
Nope.
kicked over, literally thrown in the back of a van.
That reference went boom.
I don't know if I've seen that exact one, but it does remind me of the Rufus Wainwright song, the from Shrek. I think that's his name, right? I can't remember if I'm remembering that correctly, but the Hallelujah.
Oh my god.
You tied her to the kitchen chair, you broke her throat and she cut your hair.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Oh lord.
Literally. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. I mean, there was a leak for that it was going to be a trilogy back in like October of last year, so this did not surprise me. I'm very happy. I'm very excited. I'm a little bit sad it's not going to be a season. I think there's a lot of pros and cons to it being a movie trilogy. I'm not someone who like really complains about anything, and I think that what is to come is going to be like just a little bit that we got here. Like
Yeah.
obviously seeing this on the movie screen in the theater with the surround sound, getting to see those episodes like the end of Entertainment District and the end of Swords Village there was fantastic, so it's going to be great. I will say we kind of brushed over I wanted to talk about Tanjiro like declaring that he's going to kill Muzan because this is the first season that's ending on a major cliffhanger, first of all. So all my anime onlys, how are you doing? Are you okay? Do you need a manga? Do you need a manga? Blink twice if you need it. Okay. Here you go. But like first of all, the voice acting, have to call it out. Great job to everyone involved. And also Gyu shouting for Tanjiro.
Mm-hmm.
When they like started to fall through, the fact that he is like, everyone else is kind of like, oh my gosh, what's happening? He's like, where the heck is Tanjiro? I must protect this kid. Like he is instantly trying to make sure that Tanjiro is okay, and that's when Tanjiro lands on that, which Gyu was like kind of off to the side. I didn't realize until we kind of watched the scene a second time that he was like watching it happen, and Tanjiro declares like, you're the one who's going to hell tonight, because that's when Muzan declares that he's going to kill off the Demon Slayers tonight. And Muzan's like, do it if you can, Kamado Tanjiro, and then he sends him farther down into the castle. And what a way to end the season. I would like to just shout out, I predicted this before the season started, that it was going to end here, because there were a lot of great cliffhanger moments. But I think this was by far the best place that they could put it, because this really sets us up well. It builds the hype that maybe was lost this season with the training. Yeah. So I hope everyone, manga readers and anime onlys included, are ready for what is to come, because seeing this next arc in movie theaters, even though it's going to be tough, waiting
possibly up to 3 years.
Yeah, it's good. Like, there's definitely cons, but I personally still think that, like, UFO Table knows what they're doing, and movies is what they are known for doing. So it's going to be amazing.
On that note, so many amazing things about this episode. And I'm sure we could go on and on and on, but we've already kept you here for the Hashira hour and a half. So on that note, let's discuss favorite moments real quick. I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
I don't know. Probably all of the Hashira coming in at the very end, all of their different breathing styles as they close in on Muzan for the first time together.
I'm gonna go with Zenitsu falling into the castle.
Yep.
That had to be. I feel like that's just an overall favorite moment for all of us, because it was so cold. It was so cool.
We were like sitting there like, where's Zenitsu? And they did not disappoint at all with that. I have to go with the cliffhanger. Just like Tanjiro declaring that he's gonna kill him. Like, that's our sunshine boy. That's like super silly, smiley, one brain cell boy being like, tonight I'm going to kill you. And I love that about him. I love that he's savage when he needs to be. So really looking forward to stay tuned for when these movies come out. The Hashira 3 hours when we recap the movie.
Oh my god.
We're gonna have so much to say.
We already do, and it hasn't even happened yet.
Yeah.
So I think for today that's probably good. I'm sure we can continue to expand, but we will spare you for now. Thank you so much again for tuning in and listening and following us on this journey. We are so happy to be here, and this is the start of something really special that's coming up. We're really, really looking forward to it. So thanks again for listening, and thank you again to the sponsor of this week's video, Tokyo Treat. If you guys are interested in eating your feelings after watching all of this, wiping your tears with some chips, check out the link in our description box below and use code Hashira for $5 off of your first box. They would appreciate it, and so would we. In the meantime, if you're interested in binging some previous episodes of Demon Slayer by the Hashira Half Hour reviews, you can check out our socials. We have all of our podcast episodes, past, present, and eventually future, hosted on anywhere that you listen to your podcast. So we're on Apple Podcasts, we are on Spotify. If you're interested in following along on socials to see what we might be talking about next in the interim, we are on Instagram and we are on TikTok at Hashira Half Hour. We are on X at Hashira Half, and we will see you very soon with some more content. Until then, a hearty umai.
Oh my.
Ooh, my.